Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Rock Video Rental. I am Brandon, and with me, as always, is Caleb. And we are continuing on with War Movie Month. And we're going to be talking about a classic in Full Metal Jacket. But before we get to that, we're going to do like we always do. And Caleb, have you been watching anything good?
Really not much to update. We're recording this kind of at a unique time, and so by the time this releases, I'll actually have been kind of gone on vacation for camping. So not much movie viewing experience during that time, to say the
Yeah.
least. One thing that interesting will be happening basically at the time that this episode releases, something that I know that both you and I are going to be getting involved in, is that finally, after 10 years, the new NCAA football game will be releasing.
Yeah.
So, probably won't talk a whole lot about it on the podcast. I mean, we talk a little bit about games, but sports games probably don't interest too many of our listeners.
Right. Yeah.
But
Looking
that'll
forward
be,
to that.
yeah, that'll be good.
Rock. As far as me, not a whole heck of a lot. King of the Hill. Watched some of that. Degrassi Junior High. I watched like maybe like one episode of that. Just haven't really had too much time. Last thing I watched was the Mighty Ducks, the original Mighty Ducks.
Right.
I put it on because I got so tired of watching like Frozen and Moana and stuff, and both of my kids were like playing games or watching something on their tablet, and I'm like, I'm gonna put a movie on that I'll be entertained by, but if they watch it, it's not like inappropriate for them to watch. So like, what could I put on? It was like either that or The Sandlot, and I'm like, I haven't seen Mighty Ducks in a while. I'll put that on. But yeah, that's probably like the 100th time I've seen that movie or more.
Hey,
It
always a
was
good choice.
one of the most played VHS tapes I had back in the day. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I did get around to watching Full Metal Jacket. I found time to squeeze that in, so let's talk about it.
Oh, well, everybody's heard about the bird. Bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner when a bird, bird, bird. Bird is a winner when a bird, bird, bird. When a bird is a winner when a bird, bird, bird. The bird's a
Full
winner
Metal
when a
Jacket
bird,
is from
bird, bird.
1987 and is directed by Stanley Kubrick. The plot is a pragmatic U.S. Marine observes the dehumanizing effects of the Vietnam War has on his fellow recruits from their brutal boot camp training to the bloody street fighting in Hue? I don't know. Something like that. Now, the cast, we got Matthew Modine as Private Joker, R. Lee Army as Sergeant Hartman, Vincent D'Onofrio as Private Pyle, Adam Baldwin as Animal Mother, Dorian Harewood as Eight Ball, Kevin Major Howard as Rafterman, Arliss Howard as Private Cowboy, Ed O'Ross as Lieutenant Touchdown, John Terry as Lieutenant Lockhart, and Kieran Jekinis as Crazy Earl.
So, can I say something real quick? After
Hmm.
looking at this cast list on IMDb, I totally thought the actor Kevin Major Howard, who was Private Joker's journalist friend, photographer guy.
Yeah, Rafterman.
Yeah, I thought his name was Raptor Man.
Dude,
Like,
so did I.
okay, thank you. Because after reading it, I was like, wait, he's rafter, like a floating raft, or
Yeah, or
like
like he's in the rafters.
yeah, like a ceiling rafter. Like I so thought it was raptor, like the dinosaur.
Yeah,
He's
that's what I thought
now
too.
he's now so much less cooler than I thought.
Or a bird of prey, a raptor.
Right.
Yeah, not as cool now. I mean,
Uh,
he's kind of a dopey looking short guy, so
yeah, I was wondering how he got the name. I was like, Raptor.
yeah, I was
That's
like, that's way too cool of a name for that dude. Oh man. This is a movie I've seen quite a few times.
oh yeah.
Probably. I would say at least five.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is a little bit longer of a movie, and it is one of those movies you kind of have to be in the mood to watch.
Yeah.
Much like any other Stanley Kubrick movie.
Very, very fair point.
Yeah. Um, which I mean, like all of his movies are pretty good, but you definitely have to be in the mood to watch them.
Mm-hmm.
This movie is like an example of almost like two different movies joined together.
Yes.
It feels very disjointed.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've been having that conversation a lot lately because we came off of Mad Max month and it felt
Yeah.
like they did that several times. None more notorious than the first Mad Max movie. That
Yeah.
thing totally had like two different movies, two different kind of like range of emotions set up for that. And this is very similar. Like you see the connection very clearly about like, same characters, just very different scenarios between boot camp and actually going to war. But yeah, like it had been long enough since I'd seen it last that I forgot how just disjointed it felt.
Yeah. I mean, the whole boot camp scene is like 45 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so good,
Yeah. I think
but
it's better than the rest of the movie, to be honest.
yeah, honestly, like I forgot how this movie ended, and I thought the whole Vietnam experience was honestly super weird.
Yeah. I thought so too, especially after watching the other movies we have this month
Mm-hmm.
and just like the how well, I mean, it's kind of hard to compare the Vietnam War to World War One or World War Two because of how the warfare was done. And, like Vietnam was more guerrilla warfare, and
Yeah.
the U.S. wasn't prepared for it.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's traditional battles and stuff in the other wars. So I mean, it kind of makes sense, I guess.
Well,
But
I
it's
think
like you didn't know when they weren't really like planning much of anything. They were kind of just we got to go from here to here, and then like they're walking along, and all of a sudden somebody gets shot. Which I mean, that was kind of how the Vietnam War was.
mhm. Yeah, well, it's not I think they did a decent job capturing it. Like obviously I don't know the accuracy of from it, but I mean I've heard good things from people who know more than I do. But it I would say is more so the execution, not necessarily the story they're telling, but more the execution of it
Hmm.
because it is very strange on how they pieced it together. Like for instance, when they switched from boot camp to going over to Vietnam, it wasn't straight to the field. Like there was that whole little segment where Joker and Rafterman were doing the new stuff in the city at the
Yeah,
base. And it was very like, I don't know, for the most part, peaceful and very different than when they went to war. And honestly, I forgot that segment was even in there.
yeah,
And I don't really even know what it contributed, except for maybe a little bit more insight into kind of the mindset of Joker and how he's, a little wishy washy on like what is war and how do I feel about it.
yeah. And I feel like that's was the feeling of a lot of people in the '60s and early '70s
Yeah.
because I don't know. I did like I read a little bit of stuff about the Vietnam War after watching this, just because it's such stark difference to the other wars.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's the only one the United States has lost. So it's kind of interesting to look into like some of the reasons behind that. And it's just that the Viet Cong and the North Vietnam forces were so familiar with the territory.
Dude, they played dirty.
Yeah. So like they were able to like hide and guerrilla warfare stuff like that, where the United States was much more advanced, had more troops, but were just completely overwhelmed because they didn't know how to react to it.
Hmm.
But it just like you hear the stories of the troops not knowing who the enemy was a lot of times, and the second you let your guard down, you pay for it.
Yeah.
Like I've heard stories of like I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard stories of like even kids running up and asking for help, and they have bombs strapped to them.
Yeah, I heard some stuff like that. There
Yeah.
was one story that I heard from a friend of mine when I was pretty young was that I don't know if it was from his dad or like an uncle or something, but he was told stories about how units would be going out into the woods and the Viet Cong would have single snipers posted in trees at different
Hmm.
places and they would be strapped into the tree. And so when they would get killed, they would still be in the tree. And
Yeah.
so a lot of times, units would come across a dead person in a tree, not know for sure, shoot them, and then other units would know where they were because they just shot a dead person.
Yeah.
And just like crazy little stuff like that. And so, yeah, no, definitely one of the craziest ones just from that aspect. I mean, you just kind of summed it up really well, where it's just like, doesn't matter how big or powerful the US was, like they just did not know what they were in for.
Yeah. And that's basically what happened. Plus none of like the other world powers were part of the war. Like I didn't realize that. Like the UK
Hmm.
and like Russia and Germany and stuff like really didn't have much to do with this war,
Yeah,
like directly.
it wasn't a world war. So yeah, this I did know a little bit about that where it was mostly just an American war, which honestly like I I'm not trying to get into a debate or anything because I'm definitely gonna plead my ignorance on this one, but like I don't understand all the time when the US gets involved with something when I feel like shouldn't it be the UN and not the US?
Yeah.
So, but I don't really know how that works, so I don't know.
Yeah, I wondered that too watching this like and then reading about it. I'm like, should we even been involved in this
Yeah.
without help from other like forces and stuff? But yeah, that's something for another time with people that know more about it.
Yep, not I'm not
But
gonna try to to pretend like I know enough about that.
yeah, agree. Um, so we quickly touched on like the boot camp scenes, and those are probably, like I said, it's probably like the best part of the movie. And a lot of the reason is because of Arlie Army.
Oh yeah.
Like he's incredible as the drill instructor.
Mm-hmm.
This that's where you get like all the classic lines from this movie and all the obscenities and
Oh
gay
man.
slurs and
I
all of that stuff thrown at it.
I wonder how much was scripted for him because he was just like he was a real drill surgeon, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a real drill sergeant.
Okay, that's
Um,
what.
yeah, I think he had like a general guideline to follow and
Hmm.
points to hit, and then he just kind of filled it in with ad-libbing.
Yeah, like just crazy, crazy well done. I think I timed it. I think like he went on to a 6 to 7 minute rant at the beginning. Now, of course, it wasn't like one shot, like it was spliced together,
Yeah,
but essentially it was 6 to 7 straight minutes of him at the beginning, and it was just like, oh my gosh, dude. Honestly, I mean, we already were kind of talking about it, like this movie basically could have been just basically boot camp.
yeah,
And that would have given you enough of an insight into like, dude, this isn't even war and this is hell within itself.
yeah. It could have ended with like those guys being shipped out or
Hmm.
something. Because even like the characters they had in it and stuff, like you got attached to the characters, and then it's just like, oh, you graduated, and now you guys have to go off to Vietnam, and a lot of them get split up.
Yeah, which I thought that was weird. I didn't know that they did it that way.
Yeah, I didn't know either. So they get split up, and then it's like you just kind of follow Private Joker, who's the main character.
Mm-hmm.
Which I mean, Matthew Modine did a great job playing him.
Yeah.
Um, and then he meets up with Private Cowboy towards the end, so you get like a reconciliation between those two.
A little reunion.
Yeah. Um, other things that stand out in this, there's like the nicknames and stuff always make me laugh. Like almost everybody has a nickname. And I mean, just from the boot camp scenes, we get Private Joker, Private Cowboy, Snowball, and Gomer Pyle. And Gomer Pyle's played by Vincent D'Onofrio, and he's like this big, like slow-witted, chubby guy. And
Great
Arlie
actor, by
Army
the
just
way.
like, oh yeah, like he did amazing in that job. And Arlie Army's just like riding him the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
like basically making an example of him, embarrassing him, humiliating him. Like there's parts where everybody's marching, and then they like show Pyle walking behind with his pants down, sucking on his thumb.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like all this stuff just builds up on him, builds up on him. And then there's a scene where anytime he screws up, so basically like they're doing a check or whatever, and he doesn't have his footlocker locked.
Mm-hmm.
And then the drill sergeant basically says, like, now anytime you screw up, I'm not gonna punish you, I'm gonna punish everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's when, they start turning on him and hating him for it because he screws up all the time. And one night, like, everybody wraps bars of soap in towels and, like, beats the crap out of him when he's laying in his bed.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That
But
was
yeah.
intense.
Yeah. And then we got, like, this big guy just, like, laying in his bed, like, crying out loud. And that's when he really, like, snaps. And he's just, like, a shell of who he was. And it leads up to the crazy scene of him with a rifle in the bathroom, and he's like loading it, and somebody goes and wakes up the drill sergeant, and he comes in and he's yelling at him to put the gun down, and he kills the drill sergeant, then he blows his own brains out.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
the
that was like super intense.
the two things that I kind of took away from it this time, I probably thought of some of this in the previous times I viewed this movie, but specifically this time, it's kind of like, I mean, at some certain point, somebody should have realized, like, hey, Private Pile is not a marine and is not marine material.
Yeah,
Like, he needs to be sent to the army or something. Like, I mean, even though he kind of rebounded and redeemed himself, like he wound up going crazy.
yeah.
So, as they say, Section 8. Um, but they should have really probably cut him loose earlier and just being like, "Hey, dude, you're not cut out for this. Like, cut your losses, go to the army, or like go home, something."
The National Guard
Yeah.
or something. Yeah,
But then the other element too was like, why did he snap like the last night they were there?
yeah,
Like, I would have figured he would have snapped earlier when it kept because he finally got the drill sergeant finally started like giving him positive recognition. He was finally starting to do well, and then all of a sudden he like went over the edge, and it's just like, dude, what even tipped you over the edge? Because you finally started getting positive reinforcement, and like you were going into the infantry, like everything was going the right way for him, but then all of a sudden he snapped.
yeah, because he had like an amazing shot.
Yeah, he did a good job shooting. He finally wasn't getting in trouble for like simple small things. Like he was doing everything right. It was after graduation. He found out he
Yeah,
was going into the infantry, which is probably where he kind of wanted to go to. And the drill sergeant wasn't giving him crap as much anymore. So it's just
and he wasn't even gonna have to see the drill sergeant anymore.
yeah, exactly. That was the thing. It's just like the last night didn't make sense to me. I don't know if there's something deeper to it, like something that we're missing kind of a thing, but it's just like
I think what really made him snap is when everybody turned on him, started
uh,
beating him with a soap.
Oh yeah, I agree. But I just feel like he would have snapped earlier or closer
Yeah.
to that because it's not like things kept mounting on to him after that experience. Things kind of actually started getting better for him. So yeah, just kind of a little bit of a head scratcher. I mean, maybe there's something there that would make sense to it, but that was something that I kind of missed. Not it doesn't ruin the movie, but just as far as like that, it's almost kind of like character study within the movie,
Yeah.
and
I guess it's kind of like you don't really know how anybody's going to react in a situation like that, going through like severe emotional distress.
yeah,
Like they're going to do things that don't make sense, I guess. That's
hmm,
kind of the way I saw it.
yeah,
But yeah, yeah, you made a good point. It's basically like a character study in that first 45 minutes.
hmm,
Um, we already talked about all the insults and everything and how crazy those were and rapid fire. Uh, probably one of the most famous parts of this movie is after boot camp where we meet up with Joker and he's like in the town and him and his buddy are like he's taking pictures, writing a story and all that, and that prostitute walks up.
yeah,
The me so horny, me love you long time.
mm,
That's probably like the most famous part of this movie.
yeah,
At least, that clip you hear quite a bit on other things and like parodied and everything like that.
oh yeah,
Um, oh, and also, um, we all of a sudden get like Surfing Bird. Like, it always just makes me think of Peter Griffin.
oh yeah, 100%. And that's one thing, and not to like dog this movie for it, because maybe it does make more sense to people at the time when the movie came out, but I thought the soundtrack was super weird.
A little bit. It was basically just like songs that were popular at the time, but not the typical, Vietnam movie songs you would expect, like All Along the Watchtower and Fortunate Son and all those.
Yeah, well, I mean, oh no, I guess that's about right. I thought I thought Surfing Bird was an older song.
Yeah, I think it's like a late 60s song. Surfing Bird. Oh, when we meet Cowboy's team that he's on, like all those guys are kind of messed up. Especially Animal Mother,
Yeah, right.
like the big dude played by Adam Baldwin. Yeah, he's kind of messed up. Uh, basically he's just like a killing machine, and that's
Hmm.
all he really cares about.
Dude, sorry, interjection kind of here real quick, not to get on a history lesson tangent. Do you
Mhm.
know how long the Vietnam War was?
It was like 20 years.
Dude, I did not realize that.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was that long. The United States didn't get into it until like the mid 60s, I think.
It
It
says when
started in
did
like 1955.
it's I just Googled it and of course like take it for what it's worth with the instant results that come up from Google. But it says when did the Vietnam War start and end in the US? It says 55 to 75.
Wow.
Like I had no idea. I thought it was like 10 years or something like that because I knew it was longer than the World Wars.
Yeah.
But I had no idea it was 20 years. So yeah, so when I saw Surfing, because that's the thing that made me think Surfing Bird was so weird because I thought it was like 65 to 75 essentially. And Surfing Bird came out early 60s. So I was just like, I
Oh,
feel like
okay.
it's kind of weird the time frame of using that song, but it makes more sense in this. But like, holy smokes.
Yeah, they
It
never really come out and say the exact year that this movie's based in.
yeah.
Just somewhere during the Vietnam War.
Hmm.
Um, Another part too that stands out is the sniper attack towards the end,
Yeah.
where oh gosh, I can't remember his name. The one black guy. I've seen him in
Eight
lots
ball.
of things. Yeah, 8 Ball, played by Dorian Hayward.
Hmm.
Um, he gets shot. And they're like, "Oh, we gotta help him. We gotta help him." And Private Cowboy is like in charge, and he's like, "I've seen this before." He's like, "What they do is like they'll keep shooting him, hoping to draw somebody out that's gonna come save him, and then they're gonna shoot you too." It's like, just stay where you are. And like, of course, one guy's like, "I can't take it anymore," and he runs out to help him. He gets shot, and then Animal Mother does the same thing, but he like takes cover, and he
Mhm.
basically finds out where the shooting is coming from. The rest of the team go to help. Private Cowboy dies.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they find like the shooter, and Private Joker goes to fire on her, but his gun like jams, which if I was in war, that'd probably be my luck.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But the gun like jams, and then somebody takes her out, and she's like laying on the ground, and she's like babbling something, and Joker said that like she's praying, and um Animal Mother's like in charge now, and he wants to just leave her to die, like slowly. And Joker's like, we can't just let her like leave her here like this.
Mhm.
So like he mercy kills her. And then they walk out of the building, and then everybody's singing the Mickey Mouse theme.
Yeah.
And like that's the end of the movie. It's a very anticlimactic ending.
Yes. Very weird. Like that was the thing when I was watching this, I was just like, man, I cannot remember how this movie ends. Like I remember at some point they sing the Mickey Mouse theme song, but I didn't realize
That was the
um
end.
that was the end. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think with so much time in boot camp, it didn't leave much time for like your typical war um movie stuff. Like to really get a main connection with the characters, because you did with boot camp, and then you lost most of those characters. Then you had to meet new ones, and then some of them die off pretty quick. Like a lot of the guys that were in charge, like leading, like they just kept dying off until finally, like Private Cowboy is the one in charge.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, well then that also when we were talking about just the different tactics and everything, he got in charge after their leading officer picked up a stuffed animal that was booby trapped.
yeah,
So just more tricks and messed up things that they did.
yeah. There's quite a bit of booby traps in this.
Hmm.
Yeah.
One quick side note,
Mm,
as I was kind of like searching things here as we were discussing it, I see something else here that's saying that the Vietnam War era was between 1964 and 73.
okay.
So more of a 10-year span.
Hmm.
So that was more of my understanding. So I'm not sure if
I think
that
that's
was,
when the U.S. was like really involved and were sending troops
yeah, that makes more sense because I also see
more than
that,
just like keeping an eye on it, I guess.
mhm, well, they started doing the draft for the war in 1969.
Okay.
So that makes more sense to me because that's kind of the range I was thinking the range of 10 years. So I'm not sure what the 20 years is about, but again, I'm not super up on the history of the Vietnam. So,
Well, anything else to talk about? Because I got quite a bit of trivia and facts for this one.
um, yeah, just to close out before you get into that, the Vietnam section was just really funky weird. I mean,
Yeah.
so much of the boot camp is memorable that the Vietnam stuff was kind of a letdown.
Hmm.
Because most of the time, like the war stuff is the memorable stuff from the movies. Like if you're watching any other movie, I don't know, one that quickly kind of comes to mind is We Were Soldiers.
Yeah.
They have like a before they ship out and then an after they ship out, like when they're in the war. And the stuff before they ship out is not memorable. It's all the
Hmm.
war stuff that's memorable. In this one, boot camp is what's memorable, and then yeah, there's some stuff that happens while they're in Vietnam, but it's not all that um I don't know, not to call war entertaining, but this is a movie and so it's kind of like for an entertainment factor. It
Yeah.
wasn't all that entertaining. Like it was like you have this A quality material at the beginning, and then you're watching like C quality for the second half of the movie. Like it's kind of backwards to have like the end be the less quality material. So, I mean, the sniper section at the end, gets you engrossed in the movie again, but really kind of like that's the only stuff from the Vietnam section, to me at least, that was very interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah, so trivia and facts. So in the first part of the movie, in the sequences inside the barracks during the drill, a special lens was designed to keep every single recruit in focus. Uh, Stanley Kubrick intended that no one was special and they all had the same treatment. So he wanted like all of them to be focused with no one in the background, really.
Hmm.
So according to an interview with Vincent D'Onofrio, the production schedule for the film was drawn out, um, where it was so drawn out that the lead actor Matthew Modine got married, conceived a child with his wife. The child was born, and then it turned one during the course of filming.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. In an interview for the DVD, Arlie Army said he felt Vincent D'Onofrio's performance was not only the best in the film, but it was the best of the film as a whole.
Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like that's kind of more of a better story than most of the other stuff in the movie.
Yeah, I would agree. So director Stanley Kubrick had nothing but praise for Arlie Army's skills as a performer. Kubrick was originally going to write dialogue for Army's character himself, but because he became so impressed with um, what Army improvised, he decided that it was not necessary. He simply let him ad lib and act practically. It was unheard of for a Stanley Kubrick film because he was always kind of known as like a
Mhm.
control freak
Yeah, I was
and a
gonna say.
perfectionist. Yeah.
Mhm.
Army's performances were so faultless that Kubrick only needed 2 to 3 takes to get his scenes filmed, which was also extremely rare for a Kubrick movie. The only instance Army had to film more than 2 or 3 takes scene, sorry, 2 to 3 takes of a scene was the jelly donut scene, which he claimed was filmed in 37 takes to the point his voice kept disappearing from time to time.
Oh man. Yeah, I can't
Yeah,
imagine. I didn't even think about that.
yeah. To make Sergeant Hartman's performance and the recruits' reactions as convincing as possible, Matthew Modine, Vincent D'Onofrio, and the other actors playing recruits never met Arlie Army prior to filming. Kubrick also saw to it that Army didn't fraternize with any of the actors between takes.
Yeah, that's probably a smart move.
Private Joker's shirt on Paris Island reveals his real name as J.T. Davis. It is a deliberate reference to James T. Davis, who was the first officially recognized U.S. casualty in Vietnam. He was killed in 1961.
Oh, okay.
And that is a Stanley Kubrick thing.
Mhm.
Super attention to detail. It is a common misconception that much, if not all, of Arlie Army's dialogue during the Paris Island sequence was improvised. Um, in several interviews, Army himself stated that he worked closely with Kubrick to help mold the script, it was more believable, all while retaining certain dialogue crucial to Kubrick's vision. While filming the opening scene where he disciplines Private Cowboy, and he says that Private Cowboy is the type of guy who would have sex with another guy and not give him the goddamn courtesy to give him a reach around. Uh, Stanley Kubrick immediately yelled cut and went over to Army and asked, what the hell is a reach around? And then
Oh,
Army explained what it meant. Kubrick laughed and then reshot the scene, telling Army to keep the line.
oh
That's
gosh.
funny. To create a realistic effect during the Vietnam battle scenes, the director of photography, Douglas Milsom, experimented with a camera with a shutter that was thrown off, like out of sync. This effect was actually reused in another war movie, which was Saving Private Ryan.
Hey.
Yeah. Vincent D'Onofrio gained 70 pounds to play Private Pile. That broke Robert De Niro's movie gain weight record at the time of 60 pounds that he did for Raging Bull. A record that still stands as of 2020. I'm not sure about now. Um, it took him 7 months to put the weight on and then 9 to take it off with physical training. He noted that his new look scared off women, and people would often repeat things to him, thinking that he was mentally challenged.
Dang.
Vincent D'Onofrio actually tore ligaments in his knee during the obstacle course due to the extra weight that he put on.
Ooh,
Yeah.
man.
Many have noticed that during the opening scene where Gunnery Hartman belittles Joker and Cowboy, the senior drill instructor walks past one recruit before getting to Private Pile. This has led to speculation that the actor was misplaced there by accident and that Pyle was supposed to be standing next to Cowboy, as it makes no sense for Hartman to skip over someone like he does in the movie. Arlie Army was asked about it in a 2008 appearance in which he stated that it was actually not a mistake, and during his time as a drill instructor, Army would usually skip over some privates to catch the next one off guard, as they would not be expecting to be yelled at next.
Nice. I kind of
Yeah.
anticipated it. That was my thought process.
Yeah. So in his memoir, Matthew Modine recalled a day where he asked Stanley Kubrick's permission to leave the set because his wife was pregnant and she was scheduled to have a C-section. He said, and he didn't have any scenes planned for the day. Kubrick didn't want him to leave the set, claiming that he would just pass out from the blood and it would get in the way of the doctors. It wasn't until Modine threatened to cut his own hand in order to get to the hospital that Kubrick relented and allowed him to leave by making him promise to come back immediately after it was done. Yeah, control freak.
That's Kubrick right there.
Yeah. Vincent D'Onofrio claimed that he based his performance as Private Pile on the silent film performances of Lon Chaney. He was actually overjoyed when he heard Kubrick tell him, he's like, I want you to be big, Lon Chaney big, without knowing that D'Onofrio had been studying Chaney's films all along.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Denzel Washington was considered for the role of Eight Ball, but he declined because he couldn't read the script before auditioning. He has since said that it's a role that he was regrets missing out on.
Mm, that would
Yeah.
have been interesting.
This one's kind of interesting here. Val Kilmer auditioned for the role of Private Joker, but he was rejected. According to Matthew Modine, he later met Kilmer in a restaurant who confronted him about several of Modine's roles that he had also auditioned for, but he was rejected. Kilmer mistakenly thought that Modine had been cast in Full Metal Jacket and nearly challenged him to a fight because he believed that Modine had stolen that part from him. Ironically, Modine was not even aware that the film at the time, but immediately had his agent confirm that Kubrick was indeed looking for actors in this new movie.
Hmm,
Modine then auditioned by sending Kubrick footage from the movie Vision Quest, and he won the part.
nice. Yeah, I've heard
Yeah,
that story that Val Kilmer basically helped him
screwed
get that.
himself. Yeah,
Yeah,
Val Kilmer would have been good in that role.
I think so too.
Yeah. This one's really interesting, and I heard this one not too long ago. Anthony Michael Hall was originally set to play Private Joker,
Okay.
as Stanley Kubrick had seen the movie 16 Candles 3 times, and he felt that he was perfect for the part. Hall spent 8 months preparing for the role, but could not reach an agreement with Kubrick regarding his salary for the schedule. He was replaced by Modine. Hall has since responded to claims that he was fired for objecting to Kubrick's perfectionist style of directing, and he said it was not true.
Hmm,
And the last thing I got is this movie cost $30 million and made 120 in the box office.
rock.
Grades. IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes, what are they?
IMDb 7.8.
8.3.
What?
Yeah.
No. We just got done watching 1917, which was an 8.2, and this is an 8.3.
Yeah, it's a Kubrick movie. Kubrick has like a cult following.
I know, but still, like, with how much we just talked about how disjointed it was, I can't say that that's better than that. Come on. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Rotten Tomatoes. Critic. Dang it. It's going to be like 90%, isn't it?
it is 90.
Which is, again, higher than 1917. Questionable, but fine. Whatever. Kubrick, you get your way. Um, Audience 92.
94.
Man.
Yeah, very high. You want to go first?
Sure. So Kubrick, I mean, definitely does a fantastic job, uh, as per usual. Um, as a whole, though, we've already alluded to that this is kind of an unusual movie.
Yeah.
Um, is it unified by the whole concept that revolves around the Vietnam War? Yes. But it is definitely one of those where you feel like it could be two separate movies. And if
Hmm.
that was if that was the case, then it would be a 5 out of 5 for the first half of the movie with the boot camp. But then for the Vietnam War part, man, I'd probably say like a 3.5. Like if you were
Yeah.
just talking about the Vietnam War part. So like it's a steep drop off, and I feel like I kind of understand the direction that they were going for with some of it, but it just you lose so much momentum and so many good things going on for you when they get moved past boot camp. That's just kind of like a bummer and a letdown. So I don't, I feel like 3.5 as a whole would be too low because of the great performances and everything. So as a whole for the movie, I feel comfortable giving it a 4 out of 5 because I just it's not a knock on the actors. The actors and the performance were fantastic. It's more like the movie as a whole. Not saying that Kubrick's bad, but I just feel like maybe it could have been edited better, something. It's difficult for me to give a movie a 4.5 or higher when the second half of the movie is the I don't want to say the worst part of the movie, but like is anticlimactic. Like
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
I'm trying to think of another movie that is like that I've given a good grade for, or that I feel like is a really excellent movie. Because I feel
Yeah.
like most of the movies that I give 4.5 or 5 to are ones where like they have a really good progression, they have a good ending, they have a good climax, they just fit together well. And this one really misses that mark. So I feel comfortable giving it a 4 out of 5.
Rock. Yeah, I actually did the same. I was in between this and a 4.5. Um, I feel like this is one of the few instances where a 2-hour movie could have been longer and
Mm,
they could have had more war scenes in the second half of it. Or maybe just like cut out the whole part where Private Joker and Rafterman are like in that town, in that city.
yeah,
They really could have cut that out because it didn't need it. It could have just been like, um, go from boot camp and it's like skip ahead a little bit and then boom, all of a sudden like he's with Private Cowboy.
yeah.
And then because he already kind of explained what he was doing,
Hmm.
like Rafterman was the photographer and he was the writer for the newspaper or whatever, the news. Like he already explained that to the other guys, so like we didn't even really need that stuff in between.
No.
That's why I couldn't. That's why I ended up falling on a 4. Because I felt like if that would have been taken out and they could have added more like intense scenes where, the whole thing with the sniper at the end, it was a lot of build up, but it was kind of anticlimactic at the end.
Yeah.
And I think we just needed more like tense scenes like that.
Or like something that just made sense. Like there was no closure.
No.
It was just like, dude, you just killed off one of the main characters, and there was no like, okay, you killed the person who killed him, but there's no like sense of accomplishment and closure. Like it's just like, okay, let's sing the Mickey Mouse song and fade to black.
Yeah. It's like they didn't really know how to end it, and they're like, "Yeah, this works."
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
artistic.
Yeah. So we'll get to see a different take on the Vietnam War next time, which will be interesting, so we can kind of compare those two. And it's been a long time since I've watched Platoon, but we're gonna be watching it next week. I think I've only seen that maybe once or twice. Been a while, but
Yeah. Me
yeah,
too.
it'll be interesting to compare it to this because, I mean, being a Kubrick movie, it's a bizarre movie. All of his movies are bizarre.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'll be really looking forward to Platoon. But if you guys are liking the show, please subscribe and share. You can follow us on social media. We're on pretty much every platform. Check out our YouTube, check out our TikTok. We got lots of content on there. And if you guys are really liking War Month, let us know. Leave a review on pretty much wherever you want to listen to podcasts. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Pods, we're on pretty much everything. So go ahead and do that. And come by next time. We're going to be talking about Platoon. But until then, as always, be kind and rewind.
MICKEY MOUSE, Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse. Forever let us hold our banner high, 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 high. Boys and girls from far and near, you're welcome as can be. MICKEY MOUSE, who's the leader?